I'm Suzanne LaGrande, and this is The Imaginary Possible, a show that explores the captivating potentials and troubling realities of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm speaking with Ben Forstag, who is the owner of BendOregonJobs.com, which is a resource in Central Oregon for jobs and job seekers. Welcome.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for having me.
AI is a huge topic right now. People are scrambling to figure out how to incorporate AI, if they should incorporate AI. And I just wanted to get your sense about what's your take on what's happening right now with respect to AI in the business world?
My take is obviously I've been impressed and overwhelmed with the recent surge of interest in AI. When ChatGPT came out a few months ago, I was one of those people who downloaded it and thought it was fantastic that you could have it write a speech that sounded like Joe Biden was writing it or speaking it. And so there's obviously a lot of really interesting technology out there. I think there's also a lot of scary possibilities out there. I am not a tech person. I am not a someone who's going to prognosticate on the future. What I can say is I think the hype has probably outpaced the practical use cases for AI in a lot of cases. In a lot of situations, what people are now labeling as AI is basically just kind of what we used to call big data, gathering up huge amounts of data, running crosstabs on that data and trying to find correlations between things. The difference here might be on the machine actually learning above and beyond, kind of finding those correlations.
What kinds of things are you hearing people actually use AI for?
The number one use I see, and I've noticed this both in my conversations with other people, but also just in my experience navigating the world, is using AI in the form of chatbots to manage kind of low-level tier 1 customer support issues on their website. So there's a little chat bubble on the website, you click it, and 9 times out of 10, you're talking to a robot there that's looking for keywords based on your question and is sending you through a logic tree to get to the right answer. And that seems like an appropriate use for that kind of technology. I do know there's some bigger firms that are leveraging big data and AI to make big, high-level business decisions and to look for unique opportunities that are out there. But those are the big enterprise players who are investing millions, tens of millions of dollars in AI, as opposed to the small business that might be spending $100 a month to get like a little chatbot on their website. So it's definitely there. It's definitely a thing. It's changing in terms of the consumer applicability to it. It's hard to see how it immediately impacts the smaller retailer, at least on a ongoing sustainable level. I would say, from my perspective, as someone who helps people who are looking for work, which is really one of my passions, stemming back from my days working at MaxList, and I run a job board now for folks in Central Oregon. I don't see a huge value in AI for folks who are looking for work. I don't think it offers a practical solution. I don't think you can outsmart the big companies that might be using this to find the talent they're looking for. And most importantly, I don't think any technology that separates the human component of work and looking for work is going to lead to any kind of meaningful, insightful, rewarding career. The exceptions to this might be people who are, data engineers or software programmers, where this is obviously in their wheelhouse. But if you're looking for a job as a communications professional, if you're looking for a job in the nonprofit sector, if you're looking for a job as a lawyer, I don't think trying to leverage AI is going to be your best bet.
And can you say a little bit about why not?
Well, again, first, if you're going up against a company that has decided to use its hiring or use AI as part of its hiring practices, in all likelihood, you're not going to be able to outgun them, to use the metaphor, right? They'll have more technology to do that. But also, I think the use case that you could argue for AI would be to get through like an ATS, which is the applicant tracking system. Historically, those systems have always used keyword search terms to make sure your resume or your cover letter has the right number of keywords from the job description included there. There have been tools for a decade now that help you see how well your resume and cover letter line up with the job description, and will tell you like the right keywords show up in 90% of your documents. Those tools exist. I don't know whether you would classify them as AI or not. I do know that truly any job application in which you're going through an ATS system is probably not a high return of success in general, right? And so I don't think trying to lean into that already broken system, even with more technology, is the solution. You got to break out of that system, right? And so, which is why when you talk to any career coach, what they're going to tell you is, don't, if you can, avoid using the ATS, avoid applying through a computer screen, build connections with folks, reestablish yourself as a human being with other human beings on the other side of the equation. And that's where you're going to A, find the real good opportunities, and B, make those meaningful breakthroughs that get your foot in the door and get you the job. I'm reminded of a study or an experiment that I saw several years ago. Someone in the data science world set up a little bot that applied for tens of thousands of jobs, right? And tracked his success rate in applying for these jobs without knowing anyone, sight unseen, sending out the same resume over and over again. And the response rate, not the success rate, the response rate was like 0.5%. The success rate in terms of how many jobs he actually got offered was statistically zero, right? Which just tells you something about the nature of those ATS systems. It is a numbers game, but you need to be throwing so many numbers at the system that it's a huge waste of time for most job seekers, is what I would say.
So from what you're talking about, I'm wondering if ATS and these systems that automate job searching are actually barriers rather than helpful to people connecting and getting jobs. What would you say about that?
I mean, yes. I think for very large companies, they need some way to manage the inflow of interest into their company. If you are Walmart, for example, you have 500,000 employees across the country. You probably have an equal number of people applying for jobs every year. You need some way to categorize, organize, manage all of that job seeker interest into your company. And an ATS system is a great way to do that, to very quickly say this person is qualified, this person is not, push them on the right track and go on with your day. But in terms of actual processes, in terms of getting to know an organization, in terms of success rate for job seekers, which is what generally when I'm talking to job seekers, they want to do the things that are going to maximize success, to minimize the pain of what a job search feels like for most people, which is not good. Going through those ATS systems is not a winning proposition.
Like, it's almost impossible right now not to have to apply through a computer system.
That's true, but also keep in mind that a lot of those systems aren't even from the employers themselves. So if you go to a website like Indeed, there are a lot of jobs on Indeed. Most cases, I couldn't tell you an exact percentage, but in many cases, the employer never went and put their job on Indeed. Indeed has little web robots that go through the internet and find jobs and automatically repost them onto their site. And when you click apply, you're going through an ATS system there. That ATS system is actually owned by Indeed. And what they're doing is taking all of your information, and then they'll generate an email that goes off to an employer. Now, that system seems fine in theory. The problem is if I'm an employer and I never knew there was a job on Indeed to begin with, and I get a random email, maybe I see it, maybe it gets put through my spam folder. Maybe I don't want to go through Indeed's hiring practices. Maybe that job was filled 6 months ago and it's just kind of floating around in the internet. The point being here that you are going through this ATS system that's completely disconnected from the employer's actual hiring practice, right? And so you're spending a lot of time and energy, or in some cases, very little energy, clicking the easy apply button and going through a process that literally is going to lead you nowhere.
I didn't know that. Do you think that most people know that?
No. uh we're getting away from AI, and maybe this is appropriate because when it comes to job boards, there isn't a whole lot of intelligence behind them. Most job boards are operate in a pretty opaque space in terms of where the jobs come from, where the audience comes from, and what they're doing with the data. um, I'm not going to say any names, but there are certainly job board operators out there who their business model is not actually connecting job seekers to jobs. It's gathering data on job seekers, which then they package and sell off for other reasons.
You are listening to The Imaginary Possible, a show about the captivating potentials and the troubling realities of artificial intelligence today. I'm your host, Suzanne LaGrande, and this is KBOO Community Radio, KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland.
I say this even as someone I ran a job board in Portland for many years. I own a job board in Central Oregon now. I'm very clear when I say this. Job seekers should stay away from job boards when they're looking for work, or use them only as reference points. But when it comes to the actual application, try and never apply through a job board. Like, always go to the employer's website and see if you can find the process there. And even if the employer's website has a ATS system built into it, which you can generally tell if they're asking you to fill out a form to apply for a job, see if there's some alternate method you can do, whether it's emailing a real person or emailing the HR department. Sometimes it's HR at whatever the company's email address is. Anything that breaks you out of that technology system, because working, hiring, all of this is a human process between two people or between you and another group of people at the employer. And trying to return it back to a human process is going to be the easiest, most rewarding, statistically most successful route you can take here.
We're in this interesting conundrum, I think, where technology seems to be mediating all communication, particularly with respect to job seeking. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that is connected at all to this phenomenon that I've noticed, which is there's seemingly hundreds of jobs and hundreds of people looking for, employees. And all of the people that I know who are looking for jobs have been looking for months and months and not getting any response whatsoever. So there's some sort of disconnect between people who would like to work, employers who would like to hire people, and a system that is somehow not, it's supposed to be efficient, right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if the problem is the system.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a disconnect there, right? Because we know there's a big pool of job seekers. And if you look at the data in the economy, there's a giant pool of employers looking to bring people on, right? Now, sometimes there might not be a skill overlap there, right? It's the wrong type of job seeker for the wrong type of job. But, generally lining these two things up should be simple, right? I don't have the easy answer for anyone looking for a job. And, my take for most people is like, you should expect a little bit of a slog, and you should be using your own personal and professional networks to look for jobs. Some folks are out there saying up to 70% of jobs never ever get posted online, and that they're all kind of word of mouth, or, oh, we're going to be hiring in 6 months. Let's talk then, that kind of thing. I've never been able to get to the bottom of that statistic to find out where it actually came from. But I do think there is some portion of kind of like the hidden job market that's out there. But I think when you start layering in technology here, especially the big scalable technologies for big enterprise systems, organizations that have to hire across the country or across the world, job boards that are trying to aggregate all of the jobs across the country to be the one source for everyone, I think the technology does become a problem, right? Because partially, like a lot of other online media, job seekers are the product and not the customer in those cases. But those job boards make their money when employers pay them to post their jobs, right? And so from the job board's perspective, you are the product that they're delivering off to their customer. The number of resumes, the number of views on the job description. So they will do whatever they need to maximize that number. For example, every job board these days has the easy apply button. Just click one button, we'll send an application off. It is in the job board's interest to have that, because then they can say to the employer, we sent you 4,000 applications. Those applications might have been blank documents. That doesn't matter. They're just trying to hit a number for the employer. The other thing is, again, there are some cases in which the business model has nothing to do truly with employment. It's about data gathering. We want to know what school you went to. We want to gather data on your education background, your work history, your address, because we're going to package that off and sell it to data collectors elsewhere.
It's stunning to me. And that does answer this kind of disconnect that I'm seeing. Why is it that employers, though, would go for that if it's not getting them candidates ultimately?
Because at the end of the day, you just need to find one person, right? And so even broken processes, if they find you that one person you need, then you can say they work one way or another. Now, the amount of collateral distress and upset and damage that process causes, most businesses don't think about that, right? The number of job seekers who get annoyed because they spent an hour putting together an application and sent it off to, Acme Corp, and Acme Corp never even acknowledged that they received it. Most folks in the organization don't think through like what that causes them, the impact it has on their reputation, on their, to the extent that Acme Corp might be a consumer product, the impact that, that poor candidate experience might affect, future sales down the road. Those kind of hiring processes, especially in larger companies, are so siloed off into the HR departments sometimes, and it's their job that the rest of the organization doesn't have to think about it, or doesn't think about it at all. Which means that you get really ugly processes that are not built around humans. They're certainly not built around the job seeker experience. They're built around what can we reasonably do with the kind of underfunded budgets in HR.
Wow. There's also the issue that has been discussed about bias in AI, but even just more generally, we're talking about technology and how it's mediated direct relationships with people. Do you see any way that bias is also kind of exacerbated by these systems?
I myself am a middle-aged white man, and so it's I don't see it necessarily, but that does not mean it doesn't exist. And I think what I see is a product of my own cultural experience, right? And so undoubtedly that bias exists. If for no other reason than these algorithms are being written by human beings, and they come to the table for good or ill with their own biases and prejudices, conscious and unconscious, right? And so I know the outcomes data also shows that a lot of these algorithms, in almost every use case, there's an element of bias there that reflects who was writing the code, right? Or who was at the table when the code was developed, or who was the quality control person in that process. And so that exists. I think certainly it would be a stretch. It would be unprovable to say that these algorithms, this AI, was being used intentionally to bias, to weed out certain audiences, especially in the hiring process. I would not be comfortable saying that. I think, though, in practice, it probably does, particularly older job seekers. Now, again, I'll get back to my earlier point, which is I don't think the solution is for older job seekers to go out there and try to trick the system by using AI themselves. Again, I don't think you can outgun any organization that has decided to use this practice. Also, I think that that's, at the end of the day, even if you're successful tactically, you're going to strategically lose the war, right? Because you're going to end up with an organization that doesn't want or respect an older professional in that role. And at the end of the day, because there's still at some point a human making the hiring decision. If they don't want to hire someone who's a certain age, there are easy ways to find out how old you are, right? It takes me about 30 seconds to Google someone's name and get an approximate sense of how old they are.
Here is one of the things that I have wondered about. You know, if you get 4,000, I don't know, applicants for a position, you know, you've done your due diligence in terms of opening it to the general public. And then in reality, people are basically hiring people they know.
Yes.
Wow.
And on a very simple level, that makes sense, right? Hiring is a risky proposition, particularly for smaller organizations, right? The cost of making a bad hire is huge. You know, it's a huge financial risk, and so you want to make it the best possible decision you can with limited information. And the way people do that heuristically is by either talking to people they know, hiring people they know, or hiring people who are recommended to them by people they know, right? Because even at that small little touch point, that small little reference point makes the candidate a whole lot more kind of knowable and trustworthy than a piece of paper that comes across the desk. Now, I'm not saying that this is the right process. I'm not saying this is fair or just or equitable or any of those things. I'm saying that that's how I've seen a lot of employers hire. And even if they have those 4,000 applications that come through a system, who do they end up talking to? It's often the folks who get in through kind of the back door, through those kind of informal channels.
Wow.
Also, like, how do you literally manage 4,000 applications? That would be the other question there, which is where those ATS systems come in. To a large extent, you hit the nail on the head when you said they are barriers. Their goal is to weed out the folks who are the absolute worst so they can focus on a much more manageable number of viable candidates.
If the system, because it uses keywords, only looks for people who have exactly the profile of the job, and so we're missing out on a kind of larger, more diverse range of experience that actually might be helpful in certain jobs. You know, it seems like you would only get people who have had a job history that is just exactly aligned with exactly what the job is looking for, and maybe that's not so great.
Absolutely. And I think even if you ask HR managers, they'll acknowledge that this is a shortcoming of the system, right? In the most gross example, you know, if the system is taught to look for the keyword management because they want people who have managed other people, but your resume doesn't say management, it says managed or manage or manager, like, you might not check off the right number of boxes in that ATS system, even though you're talking about literally the same thing using basically the same word. You could be weeded out. Now, I'd like to believe that if companies are using AI, it's to make those keyword searches a little bit more intelligent, not only to know that manager equals manage equals manages equals manager, but also that, you know, the keywords like led or supervised also mean manage, right? And so that you're expanding both the lexicon of what a good qualified experience looks like. But my guess is that is not the case.
You know, as a job seeker, spending hours and getting no response, it is incredibly demoralizing.
It is. I'm not going to cut it. It sucks. That's really the only way to put it. And I've been there myself. My advice to folks is don't turn it into a numbers game. Try to make human connections, because even if you're not successful on the job front search or the job front metric, you're still building up like meaningful relationships. And when you're looking for work, it's really easy to sit in your house by your computer all day, and that is not good mentally for you. So even getting out and having coffee with someone and chatting, that's a good in and of itself.
Well, you know, it's such good advice, but it's also a little bit perplexing to me. Like, how do you make human connections in this day and age when everything seems to be so mediated by computers?
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to use the computer one way or another. But what I have found is that if you approach people with a clear ask and good intent, uh, in Portland particularly, people are very willing to share their time. A few years ago, I was in a job search and I didn't know exactly how to express what I was looking for, right? And so I was going around saying like, I want to work for an entrepreneurial nonprofit. That's like the closest I could get to it. Like a nonprofit where like, you know, their budget goals and like we stick to a business plan. And I kept having meetings with people and I was not getting traction until I had a meeting with someone who like, oh, what you're talking about is a B Corp. That's what you want to be a part of. You don't want to, which like, you know, that conversation right there, that just changed the entire trajectory of where I was going. And I couldn't have told you ahead of time that that's what I was looking for or what value I was going to get out of it. But it was like that eureka moment was huge for me, right? And it really changed the whole direction of my job search. And so, you know, I really encourage people to put together a simple ask of folks, try to get a sense of what you're looking for, and then go in with earnestness and ask people for help. And go in truly making yourself a little bit vulnerable and asking for help in a way that people can help you will get you results. And it's not going to be immediate. And it's not, if you're under the gun and you need a job tomorrow, this is not the winning approach for that. I don't know what the approach for that is. But, you know, in terms of finding long-term, meaningful, rewarding work, I think that's what the data bears out.
So I've been speaking today with Ben Forstag. If people want to find out more about you and your work, where can they go?
The best place to start is probably on LinkedIn. I am there under Ben Forstag. You can also check out bendoregonjobs.com if you happen to be an employer or a job seeker in Central Oregon. I promise we're not one of those bad job boards I mentioned earlier. But also during the 9 to 5 hours of my day, I work at the Portland Metro Chamber, which is the voice of the Portland business community. And you can find me at any one of those websites.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're listening to The Imaginary Possible, a show about the captivating potentials and troubling realities of artificial intelligence today. I'm Suzanne LaGrande, and this is KBOO Community Radio, KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland. To listen to this and other episodes of The Imaginary Possible, visit us online at kboo.fm or theimaginarypossible.com. Thanks so much for listening.